You've got 30 days to relocate your livestock situation, or we'll have you forcibly removed. That's the sentence that started the biggest neighborhood war in Texas history. I go home, standing on the porch of my grandfather's ranch, land that has been in my family since 1952, staring at a woman who moved here 6 months ago and thinks she can evict me from my own property. Karen Whitfield clutches her clipboard like it's the Constitution itself. Her bleached blonde hair doesn't dare move, no matter how much the Texas wind tries to liberate it. The morning smells like cattle and hay, honest work, but she has turned it into a cloud of industrial-strength vanilla that could stun a mosquito at 50 yards. And this isn't about grass height or noise ordinances. This is about 40 acres with oil rights some developer wants. And Karen, she thinks she's found herself an easy target. "Ma'am," I say evenly, "you do realize this is my private property, right?" Her laugh could curdle milk. "Not for long, sweetie." What would you do if a newcomer tried to steal your family's legacy? Drop a comment. I bet your HOA's got a nightmare story, too. Little did Karen know, she just declared war on the guy who spent 15 years writing the rules she is trying to weaponize. Let me back up. My name's Garrett Stone. 6 months ago, I was living the D.C. dream, senior policy advisor at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, writing the same HOA regulations Karen now quotes at me like scripture. 15 years of bureaucratic battles and burnt coffee until Grandpa Joe passed away and left me the Lazy G Ranch in Cedar Falls, Texas. Population, 8,000 and change. The kind of town where folks know what color you painted your barn before you finish painting it. I traded my cubicle for a wraparound porch where morning coffee tastes like freedom and the sunrise turns the world to gold. Unchanged. I traded my government cubicle for a wraparound porch where morning coffee tastes like freedom. Life was simple again, until the subdivision arrived. Enter Karen Whitfield, 52, real estate agent turned neighborhood tyrant. She moved from Dallas, bought herself an $850,000 McMansion in Whispering Oaks Estates, a subdivision that sprouted up beside my fence line like a migraine with granite countertops. Within a month, she'd made herself HOA president. Within 2, she was patrolling in yoga pants and power perfume, clutching that clipboard like it could summon divine judgment. The first violation notice appeared on my door 3 months after I moved in. Apparently, my cattle were creating agricultural nuisances that threatened property values. Never mind that my family was raising cattle here when her subdivision was still tall grass and tumbleweeds. I laughed it off at first, figured a cup of sweet tea could sort things out. That was my first mistake. Karen showed up next week with her cousin Dale, county code enforcement, both armed with cameras and the moral authority of bad reality TV hosts. They photographed everything: manure piles, Grandpa's 1974 tractor, even my chickens, who looked personally offended. Then came the envelope. Manila, taped to my front door, thick enough to choke a mule. Inside, a cease and desist letter from Whitfield and Associates Legal Services. Translation: Karen's kitchen table and a Costco printer. It demanded I halt all agricultural operations immediately, citing environmental hazards and aesthetic violations. The cherry on top, a doctored survey map claiming my land encroached on HOA territory. That's when I knew this wasn't confusion. This was strategy. She wanted me out, and she'd drown me in paperwork to make it happen. 2 days later, I got an invitation to an emergency compliance hearing at the Whispering Oaks Country Club. Not a request, a summons. The room reeked of air freshener and old money. 12 board members sat behind a mahogany table, while one lonely metal chair faced them. My seat, apparently. Karen presided like a judge from a suburban dystopia. Her PowerPoint glowed behind her. Agricultural operations impact on community standards. Every photo twisted into an accusation. Manure pile. Biohazard. Barn. Structural eyesore. Chickens. Disease vectors. She finally turned to me. Mr. Stone, you've been called here tonight to address serious violations of our community covenants. Ma'am, I said, I'd like to see a copy of those covenants. The temperature dropped faster than a lead balloon. Karen fumbled papers like she was hunting for her conscience. Those documents require legal review, she said. We can't hand out proprietary information. That, when I pulled my HUD business card from my pocket and slid it across the table like a poker chip. Well, Karen, I said softly, I spent 15 years writing housing regulations for the federal government. Maybe I can help you navigate those legal complexities. Silence. Then the color drained from her face like someone pulled the plug on her confidence. Unchanged. She picked a fight with the wrong rancher. After the meeting, a woman approached me in the parking lot. Beverly Chen, retired teacher, kind eyes, hands shaking. Karen's been lying, she whispered. About your ranch, about the HOA, even about the money. That's how I found my first ally. Within days, Karen escalated. Monday, Dale shows up claiming my barns were unpermitted structures. Tuesday, environmental inspectors on my land testing groundwater. Wednesday, the state vet checking for diseased livestock. Every complaint anonymous. Every inspection perfectly timed to waste my week. But the inspectors? All left shaking their heads. My ranch was cleaner than the country club kitchen. Karen wasn't trying to prove violations. She was trying to bleed me dry. Then Beverly showed up again, this time with a folder that would make any lawyer sit up straight. Text messages, emails, bank records, proof that Karen was getting paid by developer, Sunset Holdings, to push me off the land. A $50,000 finder's fee if she succeeded. But that wasn't even the biggest bombshell. The HOA itself, the mighty Whispering Oaks, wasn't legally registered. They'd skipped filings, skipped covenants, skipped everything. Beverly, I said, your HOA has as much legal authority as my chickens. Her face went pale. Karen had conned them all. That night, I got a call from Dr. Martinez, the state vet. Mr. Stone, she said, your Ms. Whitfield has filed the same livestock complaints in 3 other counties. Each case, a rural landowner next to a new development. Each one ended with the family selling out. It wasn't just harassment. It was a business model. How many legacies had she bulldozed for profit? That's when I made up my mind. Time to make a few phone calls to old friends in Washington. Friday morning, Channel 7 News rolled up my driveway. Karen had staged a full-blown media circus. Neighbors in surgical masks, kids looking scared, Karen waving her arms like she just discovered a chemical spill. This ranch operation is endangering our community, she told the camera. I sipped my coffee. Black, I said, strong enough to wake the dead. But then the story flipped. The reporter did her homework, interviewed real locals. Old Pete Jameson spoke plain truth. That woman has been trying to run Garrett off his land since she got here. Mrs. Rosa Martinez from the feed store backed him up. If there were problems, we'd know about it. His cattle are healthier than half our customers. By noon, Karen's PR stunt was crashing harder than a calf through a barbed wire fence. The evening broadcast turned her pollution story into a land grab scandal. And I wasn't done. That weekend, I filed 3 complaints, one with federal housing authorities, discrimination against agricultural land use, one with the State Real Estate Board, undisclosed financial conflicts, and one with federal investigators for fraud, mail tampering, and misuse of official-looking documents. Editor note: verify if user wants exact agency names cited, currently written generally for safety. Meanwhile, Beverly was leading a quiet rebellion. By Tuesday night, she'd shown the board the evidence. Fake paperwork, missing filings, secret payments. The recording she played me later was priceless. Karen shouting, "This is a witch hunt." One man replying, "Maybe, but you're the witch." By midweek, half the board resigned. The HOA was collapsing like a sandcastle in a storm. Thursday, Karen made her last desperate move. She called the sheriff, claiming I'd threatened her. Sheriff Morrison, who'd known my grandpa, drove out with an apologetic sigh. "Garrett," he said, "I've got to ask, but I don't buy a word of it." I showed him call logs, camera footage, Beverly's recordings. After 30 seconds of hearing Karen's shrill rants, the sheriff just shook his head. "Son," he said, "I've seen plenty of crazy, but this woman's in a league of her own." He tipped his hat. "You keep doing what you're doing." That night, I sat on the porch, same boards Grandpa nailed down 70 years ago, watching the sky melt from gold to indigo. Coyotes called in the distance, the cattle settled in, and I realized this was never just about a ranch. It was about home, about what happens when ordinary people stand their ground against the machinery of greed. Karen wanted to weaponize bureaucracy, but some of us wrote the playbook. And in the quiet of that Texas evening, I promised Grandpa Joe that as long as there's such breath in my lungs and coffee in my cup, the Lazy G Ranch will never fall.